I've been solo traveling this last month through mostly Germany and a little bit of France in this last stretch of my 3-month Europe trip. I've gotten the chance to apply my French and German, and at times I felt like my skills are not good enough, but I've also been deeply encouraged and learned more language learning lessons than I would have expected. So like my last video, I'll be sharing the often unspoken details of learning and using your target language overseas. The first thing, can you really learn a language without living in the country where it's spoken? I live in Australia and I've surprised myself on numerous occasions during this trip. I bought a shared room through Airbnb as my accommodation for a festival, and on my last night I did have a conversation with the owners of the apartment, and they didn't slow down their speech, they were just talking normal. When they'd ask me a question, yes, my German speaking was still very choppy, but I was still managing it, and this whole thing just really surprised me because it felt so authentic. If you even book a class on Lingodo or italki, it's very planned. And another example is at the train station, the Deutsche Bahn was doing Deutsche Bahn things and was cancelling so many different trains. So this guy was asking me if I was trying to get to Düsseldorf as well, and from there we started a bit of a conversation, and that was just so cool. Also in supermarkets, I feel like a lot of elderly people are very chatty. The next awesome thing is that I was a volunteer in Germany. Most of the volunteers were also from Germany. So for me as a learner, I was able to kind of include myself in a lot more conversations. I did make some friends who I'm in contact with. Getting that really close and regular contact is moving forward also going to be awesome for my German. The next thing I've noticed is that how I go in a German conversation is not just dependent on my level. There was one other person at the volunteering. We had this really cool conversation for what felt like over an hour, but he would talk very clearly and use simpler vocabulary. If I didn't understand a word, I could still understand the majority of the other words he was saying to still be able to follow along with the story. But then there was one person who I barely could understand a word because she spoke very, very fast. But then also with my new German friend, gradually I've been able to kind of adapt to his style of speaking German more and more. That's something he's also said, that he's noticed that my German's already better, which is insane. However, in saying all this, having these different conversations with a variety of voices and speaking styles, it has led me to realize that my comprehension is not where I want it to be. I want to be able to, similarly with my French, kind of listen to anything and mostly be able to understand it. When I go back to studying German, I'm going to be taking a focus on trying to understand more complicated things and getting a diverse input of voices. I did want to comment as well on how most Germans have kind of reacted when I've been speaking German. I would say that French people generally react very, very positively and more often than Germans. However, a lot of Germans have still reacted and commented and said that they think that my German is good, which has been really, really nice and encouraging to hear. Also, again, it just reinforces that you don't need to be perfect and you can make mistakes, and just the fact that you're doing it and that you're learning and trying to improve, that's seriously the main thing. And I think people really like that and yeah, admire that in a way too. So I hope that's really encouraging for you, because I thought I'd have to be perfect. So in terms of people switching to English, because it's something that you hear that Germans do a lot in Europe, they didn't switch to English nearly as often as I thought they would. It would often give me confidence to keep going in a conversation in German. And there's been some people as well who have asked me, like, which language do you prefer? Do you prefer English? Do you prefer German? And I found that just so respectful. And I would say generally when I've initiated a conversation in German, most people have responded in German, which I just find very, very nice. It's kind of jarring when you say something in German and then somebody comes straight back at you in English. And it has definitely been because people have seen that my German level is not so good, or their English is just way better. And that is true. A lot of German people do speak English very, very well. So the next thing I noticed in both languages is that some days I speak the language better than others. When I'm so tired, I'm still not used to speaking and using German or French as my default. This has often worried me, but then I typically have a good sleep, and then the next day everything seems to be reset and I'm good to go again. On the positive, I have noticed that my French and German are typically better when I don't overthink it. Sometimes I'll think very, very carefully about getting the sentence structure perfect and making sure the grammar is perfect. Is it dem? Is it den? Is it das? Is it der? Or whatever. Sometimes this means that I'm too slow. I lose my flow. When I stop overthinking and just say what I want, the words often come out correctly anyway, and it just sounds more natural. And yes, I of course make mistakes, but either way, because I've practiced, each mistake still brings me one step closer to getting it right next time. All this, I believe, just comes from immersion and developing that sort of feel for the language rather than just purely working on grammar drills. To add on to that, I am progressing in German way faster when I just accept that I am not perfect and just go full steam ahead trying to say something despite if I make mistakes. The more output I produce, the more comfortable it becomes, the more practice I'm putting into it. One thing about German has helped me realize one of the problems that I've been really struggling with my French. Over my last month, I realized that sometimes, weirdly, I feel better speaking German because the pacing is kind of a lot slower. It's kind of a lot similar to the natural speed of my own thoughts. Yet this struck me as weird because my French is far stronger than my German. When I hear somebody speaking French, I feel like they already have all their thoughts in order before they even speak so that they are able to actually maintain such a rapid pace. And personally, I've always found that if I can't say something really, really quickly, or if I take a massive pause to think and align my thoughts so they're in order, that's not very good French. It's mainly because I put this sort of pressure on myself to kind of sound as native as I possibly can, but that's not actually my goal. My goal is just to express and say whatever I want to. And this has led me to think that I need to look into this a bit further and try to figure out what my voice is in French. After I was in Germany, I did go back to France for a couple of days and I had to switch back to French, and I was intertwining German words in there occasionally, but found I could still manage the French language quite comfortably, probably because I had been using it like every day just a month before that, so it was still quite recent in my mind. On the contrary, when I was switching from French to German the first time, I did have a lot of difficulties. It was quite jarring when I went from Australia to France and then from France to Germany, and it's so easy to move between the countries, obviously. And if you're interested to know how I did learn German whilst living in Australia, I did make a video of all of the best resources that really kind of elevated my progress, so check that out if you're interested, and I'll see you in the next one.